Fin whaling ban still causing an uproar, an earthquake in the south, bank admits to breaking the law, and more on this episode of the Reykjavik Newsdesk. First up on Newsdesk, members of the Parliamentary Committee on Employment met to discuss Minister of Fisheries Svandís Svavarsdóttir's decision to place a temporary ban on the hunting of fin whales. In case you missed it, I did a complete rundown of the temporary fin whaling ban and its implications and possible consequences in my previous video. As I reported, members of the Independence Party and the Progressive Party have been upset with Svandís for instituting this temporary ban on fin whale hunting, which, I again emphasize, has no cultural nor historic roots in Iceland, but rather is the very recent hobby of a very rich man named Kristján Lofsson. The minister made this decision following a report from the Food and Veterinary Authority stating that the hunting of fin whales violates Iceland's animal welfare laws, and therefore, she says she had no choice but to put this ban in place, at least temporarily. However, members of the Independence Party in particular have been vocal that they're worried that when this ban expires at the end of August, that she'll simply renew the whaling ban, which she could, sure. As such, they encouraged Svandís to work with Kralla HF, which is the fin whaling company owned by Kristján, to get their practices in line with Iceland's animal welfare laws, which would be pretty difficult because the main reason why the practice of fin whale hunting breaks Iceland's animal welfare laws is because in about 25% of cases, this report found, it took these animals hours to die painfully. And so in order to be in line with the animal welfare laws, Kralla would need to ensure that each and every whale that they hunt dies instantly or very, very quickly. Svandís reiterated that the whales cannot speak for themselves, so she had no choice as Minister of Fisheries, Food and Agriculture to institute this temporary ban on what amounts to an unlawful practice. For their part, Kralla HF has said that they would provide assistance to those workers who will seek damages from the government. As reported, some 200 people were slated to work for Kralla this summer related to fin whale hunting. Given this statement, whether or not Kralla is going to pay any sort of severance or financial compensation to these workers is unclear, but they have offered to assist them if they plan on suing the state over this. Now, this ban has been making international headlines. In some cases, they've left out the part that the ban is temporary. But I want to emphasize another point, which is that even if Svandís renews the ban, even if she decides to let Kralla's permit to hunt whales expire at the end of this year, even if Parliament passes a law banning the hunting of fin whales, we still have elections in this country, and our next parliamentary elections are in 2025. And after the results of those elections come in, when the leading parties engage in coalition talks, if the Independence Party or the Progressive Party end up controlling the Ministry of Fisheries, it's entirely possible that they could just make fin whale hunting totally legal and okay in a legal sense once again. In other news, a man was arrested for severely beating another man in a downtown club in Reykjavik. The victim was rushed to hospital unconscious, but was declared dead shortly after arrival. The man who beat him is now in police custody. For those keeping track, this now makes 5 active murder or manslaughter investigations ongoing in Iceland, which is, of course, 5 too many. But Associate Professor of Sociology Margrét Valdimarsdóttir pointed out that murder and manslaughter are not on the increase in Iceland. On the contrary, while conceding that, yes, 5 murders or manslaughters within a few years is a lot, if you look at the actual numbers, there were 25 murders between 2012 and 2028, but 28 from 1999 to 2011. Furthermore, Iceland's population has increased by about 100,000 people since 1990, and if you factor in the tourism boom of the past 10 or 15 years, where like 1 million people every year are coming here, Iceland's murder rate per capita has actually decreased over the years. Eastlands Banky has made a settlement agreement with the Financial Supervisory Authority, or FME, over how the bank conducted the sale of 22.5% of its shares in March 2022. Now, the sale of these shares was very controversial, but first, I'd like to give you a little background. When the entire economy collapsed in 2008, the government opted to simply take over these banks, and Eastlands Banky was one of those banks. Since then, the Independence Party in particular have been really pushing to privatize the banks again, and a part of privatization is, of course, selling shares to private entities. So in March 2022, 22.5% of Eastlands Banky shares were put on the market, but then it came to light that one of the buyers for these shares was a company owned by Benedikt Sveinsson, who is the father of Minister of Finance and chair of the Independence Party, Bjarni Benediktsson. This kicked off an investigation of sorts where an FME started looking into Eastlands Banky's own practices during the sale of these shares. In the course of this, FME found some pretty shady stuff, and as a result, Eastlands Banky will be paying a total of 1.6 billion ISK to FME as a part of a settlement agreement. In a statement from Eastlands Banky, they had said that this stems from the bank not following all the rules and regulations regarding, quote, recordings of phone calls, providing information to clients, classification of investors, and measures against conflicts of interest. For example, separations of work areas from the trade areas of employees. As a result, some members of parliament are publicly declaring that this is tantamount to Eastlands Banky admitting that it broke the law, and the calls for a truly deep-seated independent investigation are even greater now, but what will become of that remains to be seen. An earthquake registered at a magnitude of 3.8 was recorded at Mýrdalsjökull Glacier. There were several aftershocks following that, including one that was a 3.3. No volcanic activity was recorded in this area at this time, and to be fair, there are a lot of earthquakes in this area in particular, which can be said about many areas of Iceland. But Mýrdalsjökull is where the Fimmvörðuháls Pass is located, and you may remember that there was a very pretty lava eruption that happened there in 2010. Mýrdalsjökull Glacier also covers the volcano Katla, and Katla has been showing some interesting activity lately, and when it erupts, it'll probably be a major event. But for right now, Katla seems to be pretty relaxed. But you know how it is with volcanoes. I don't need to tell you. They're incredibly unpredictable. And lastly, the town of Ísafjörður in northwest Iceland will be experimenting with making a portion of one of their streets temporarily car-free. They specifically intend to make part of Hafnarstræti in Ísafjörður, I emphasize, not Reykjavik, but in Ísafjörður. Hafnarstræti, part of it, car-free from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon at times when the cruise ships are in port. They're starting off small by only doing this for about 5 or 6 days, but there are hopes to expand on this, and all I have to say to Ísafjörður is good luck. We have a portion of our main street, Laugavegur, in downtown Reykjavik, which is ostensibly supposed to be car-free, but as one who frequently walks downtown, I can personally attest that every single day I see car drivers who either don't know or don't care, and they'll drive down the street anyway, and sometimes they'll honk at pedestrians who do not get out of the way fast enough for these entitled drivers. So, Ísafjörður, I wish you the best of luck with this experiment. I really hope it goes a lot better than it's been going in Reykjavik. And that's all I have for you today on the Reykjavik News Desk. Again, be sure to like and subscribe. And I'd also like to say that last Saturday's Ask Me Anything session is now available on my Patreon. So you can go to my Patreon and view the Ask Me Anything session. And this is a session for $20 patrons wherein folks can, well, ask me anything, as the title would suggest, about myself, about Newsdesk, about Reykjavik, about Iceland, about anything. We always have a great old time. And I'm also pleased to announce that the results of the viewer poll are in. The viewer poll is for $15 and $20 patrons who get to decide what single topic I'm to report on next. And the winner this time around is the urban and rural divide in Iceland. Yes, I'm very excited to do this particular topic because I'm sure this is a topic that resonates with just about anybody, no matter where you live. I'm sure that there is a divide between people who live in cities and people who live in the countryside, whether it's political or cultural or what have you. And we're going to examine that divide right here in Iceland. It's going to be a great time. And you can take part in both of those things by joining my Patreon. There's a link to that in the description, which reminds me, I want to thank Corinne Vasquez, Marion Ward, Christopher Hunter, Marion Moores, Kimberly McDaniel, Iceman98, and Octavia Hrundsjónsdóttir for being patrons on the $20 level, Ian Kingsley and Laura Johnson for being patrons on the $15 level, Hafstein Himmellomi Reginason, Stephen Ellis, and Vivi Carvalho Schaffner for being patrons on the $10 level. You folks rock. That's all from me at Newsdesk. Be good to each other.